Hey, my name is Kendall, and I decided to start making book content, even though this has been the weirdest reading year for me so far. But it's the end of quarter one, and I read 11 books so far from January to April. So let's talk about them. Okay, I started this year by reading We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver, which is a paranormal horror story. This book is about a young queer couple, Charlie and Eve, who renovate houses. And the newest house that they renovated is kind of in a secluded area in the woods. So already set up to be creepy. But one day, a family shows up on their door who the husband states that he used to live in this house and he wanted to stop by and show his family around his childhood home. Having a family stop by while you're in the middle of renovating and basically tearing down their childhood home is already kind of creepy, but then they end up not leaving and a whole bunch of weird stuff starts happening. Okay, so I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I'm not the biggest horror thriller reader, but I went into this with a lot of expectations because I believe on the cover it said for fans of Parasite and Get Out, which are both very good horror thriller movies. But although this had good horror and thriller elements, and I was on the edge of my toes a lot of the times, I think comparing it to Parasite and Get Out was not a good comparison because there's not like an overall message to this book. I guess it could be said that there is some stuff about religion and old gods, but it never really dives deeper into it. And I felt myself being just really frustrated at the main character and her decisions more than I was interested in what was actually happening to her. I will say though, what was interesting was before each chapter, there were little blog posts, newspaper clippings, forum posts that at first you had no idea what they were talking about or how they went together. But at the end, whenever you realize how all of those connect, that was a really fun connection for me. Okay, my next read of 2025 has none other than Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in a fantasy romantasy series that is extremely popular on BookTube, Book Talk, national bestseller, whatever. I'm not even going to try to recap what this book is about. And also, I'll just tell you right now, I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. So if this series is really important to you and bad reviews hurt your feelings, go ahead and skip a couple minutes or a minute. I don't think I'm going to talk about it that long. Here's the thing with this book. I will admit that I did read it in a single day. So there was something about it that kept me turning the pages. But I think it was almost spite or frustration because it really felt like Rebecca Yarros was just throwing every fantasy idea that she had just at a wall and seeing what stuck. She also recycles plot lines constantly. In Iron Flame, Xaden has an ex that shows up and Violet gets jealous, and then in Onyx Storm, Violet has an ex that shows up when it's time for Xaden to be jealous. And I'm just like, we already did this. We're already here. I don't need the jealousy X plot again. Anyways, am I going to continue this series? I have no idea. Maybe just out of spite to see what happens, but this is not, it's just not good writing. The next book that I read is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder, which is a YA fan. YA? Is this YA? Oh, it is YA. Okay, this is a YA fantasy series, and this is actually a reread for me. I needed a palate cleanse after Onyx Storm, and I needed to be reminded that fantasy can be good. So, Poison Study is about a young girl, Yelena, who is sentenced to death for a crime she committed. But on the day she is supposed to die, she gets the option from the head guard to become the next poison taster for the commander instead. Obviously, to save herself from death, she takes that chance and she begins to study poisons, and you learn what happened to her, why she was in jail. But of course, as she's training to be a poison tester, there are rebellious plots and low-key some magical things happening that start to test her. This book held up. I remembered some of it from when I first read it in 2016, I think, and I enjoyed it so much. There are definitely some standard YA fantasy tropes in here. But what I love about this one is the growth of Yelena. You really see her become a capable, smart poison tester and spy later on. And I'll say there is a romance aspect to this, and I loved it so much because Maria Snyder really is good at showing you people's feelings instead of just telling you. Like, okay, in Onyx Storm, like, I think Xaden and Violet repeat over and over how much they'll die for each other. But like the couple in Poison Study, they don't have to say it. Like, you just know that they'll like kill some people over each other and that they're capable of doing it. This was 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't give it a full 5 out of 5 stars just because there are some standard fantasy tropes that aren't like groundbreaking. But still a really fun read, and I definitely recommend if you are in the mood for a fantasy. Okay, next was actually another reread. I reread Network Effect by Martha Wells, which is the 5th book in the Murderbot Diaries, and I believe this is the first full-length novel, while the first 4 are novellas. The series centers on the character Murderbot, who is a sec unit, which is a robot human hybrid. They were created and enslaved by a company to be security units, but Murderbot was actually able to hack their code so that they have free will. And all they want to do is like watch TV, watch their programs, and chill. But they end up getting sucked into helping humans. And along the way, they learn how to have relationships with humans as well as learning to have relationships with other robots and like intellectual software. They actually have a friendship with a sentient spaceship that they name Art. You really get a lot of Murderbot and Art's relationship in this book specifically, which is why I like to reread it so much. Out of all the Murderbot Diaries books, I think this one is probably my most reread because it just is a really good comfort read. It explores a lot of Murderbot's relationships while still being a really fun action sci-fi novel. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and like I said, I definitely recommend reading the entire Murderbot series. Okay, next I read Watermoon by Samantha Soto-Yambo. This is a magical realism fantasy about a woman who inherits a pawn shop from her father, but this is not a normal pawn shop. This is a magical pawn shop that lives behind the facade of a ramen restaurant in Japan. And instead of selling actual items, humans come in to sell their memories and regrets. So this actually ends up being a dual perspective between Hana, the pawn shop owner, and a man who ends up walking into the pawn shop to help her uncover a mystery and whatnot. Ooh, I wish I liked this book more. I think this would have benefited with just being in the male's perspective, Kishin, and we discover the world with him. And I think it would have made each reveal that more whimsical and just that more magical, I guess. Like, for example, it kind of felt like I was in Alice in Wonderland, switching from Alice's perspective and like the White Rabbit's perspective. Despite that, though, the mystery of the pawn shop and where her father went and all of that stuff and who are these creatures that take things from the pawn shop and whatever, all of those reveals were really fun at the end. Is why I did end up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I would recommend it. I did see a lot of reviews saying that it had Studio Ghibli vibes, and I can kind of see that. I don't think it captures the essence of a Ghibli movie when it comes to the like cozy nostalgia, deeper meaning that those movies have. So I don't know. I don't know if I would recommend a Watermoon or not. This was definitely like a weird one for me. I had way higher expectations for it. Okay, next I read The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This is a standalone fantasy novel. This book centers on a mother and son in the Matsuda family who live in a coastal like country town where all of the families living in this town adhere to like ancient ways in order to preserve their like sword fighting warrior techniques. So you're switching perspectives between a 14-year-old and then his mom. It's hard for me to talk about this book without any spoilers because the spoilers are what makes this book so good. But okay, here's what I will say. Emma Wong does character development like no other. The fantasy is good. The world building is good. It did take me a couple chapters to wrap my head around the world that we lived in. Other than that, you are able to fully feel these characters. She writes them so well that I really felt like I knew everyone in the Matsuda family and their friends and whatnot. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars because once it got going, it did not stop. And I loved every single character we came in contact with. The backstory of Misaki, who's the mother, was so good. And her character development and like what she's gone through as a mother was so brilliant. And then her relationship with her husband and the rest of her family and her sons was just also beautifully written. Okay, this is like kind of spoilery, so skip a couple if you don't want any spoilers at all. There is a character that has development in the like second, third half of the book that I did not see coming at all. I honestly thought this man, spoilers, was going to stay the same the entire book, and I honestly would have been fine with that. I think that would have made sense and I wouldn't have been upset. But him getting actual character development and changing as a person is what pushed this into 5 stars for me because I did not see it coming and it was done so brilliantly. So brilliant, whatever, you get what I'm saying. Next, I was really in my Lover Girl era and I read Wait For It by Mariana Zapata, which is a romance. It is a slow burn and neighbors to friends to lovers book. This is about Diana, who she is a single mom raising 2 kids that aren't actually hers. They're her brothers who passed and left his sons to her. And Diana basically tries to navigate her life raising these 2 boys while also falling for her neighbor, who also happens to be the coach of one of her son's baseball teams. And it is just so tropey. I did give this 3 out of 5 stars, but thinking about it later, I think I might have knocked it down to 2 because there was certain like tropes thrown in there that felt like they were just thrown in there to have a reaction from Dallas, the male love interest, and I thought that was just icky. It also took so long for them to get together. I think this book is like 400 pages or something like that, and I just wish we had more time with Diana and Dallas as a couple. But despite that, I did really enjoy this because I love a dynamic between 2 people where they are basically in a relationship by the time they confess their feelings and are in a relationship. Every time Dallas would refer to Diana as like babe or honey or any type of pet name, I was kicking my feet and giggling. Next, I have a weird one. I read a play, The Last Days of Judas Iscariot by Stephen Adly Gurgis. I blame several things on me reading this play. 1, Jesus Christ Superstar. I had a hyperfixation and it led me to wanting more Judas content. Sorry. Second, my high school. My high school actually put this play on when I was like a junior, sophomore, senior, somewhere in there. And I remember the final scene from this play really impacting me. And I just had the urge to read it again to see what the rest of it was like because I did not remember. Basically, here's what it is. It's a courtroom drama that takes place in Purgatory in a town called Hope. It is Judas versus heaven. Judas didn't even bring this case forward. A lawyer who thinks that Judas doesn't belong in hell actually did, like, for him. So basically, you have various characters brought up to the witness stand to talk about Judas's life and Judas's decisions and whatnot. And then the entire play is a debate about if Judas deserves to stay in hell or if he deserves redemption and gets into heaven or not. Biggest warning, this play was written in 2005 and you can tell there is so much weird racial stuff. Like, the author really tried to modernize all of the characters. Like, there's just a bunch of like weird slang that feels out of place. There's use of slurs that definitely wouldn't fly today, and just a bunch of racial stuff that just felt unnecessary and was really jarring and took me out of the story a lot of the time. So that was extremely surprising because I was like, how did my high school in Texas put this on with all of this there? Like, I don't remember any of that being there. Okay, literally, if anyone from high school is watching this, please just like tell me if you remember there being cuss words, slurs, use of AAVE slang in this play, because it's rampant and I don't remember that being in there at all. Okay, so despite that, there is really good scenes talking about the moral dilemma of should Judas be forgiven or not. Particularly the opening monologue by Judas's mother and the final conversation between Jesus and Judas really hit me and really stuck in my brain for weeks after I got done reading this book. And like the entire like almost lesson at the end is that Judas is already forgiven but can't forgive himself, so he's just stuck in a cycle of despair. And I think that was really interesting, as well as a lot of the other morality stuff that gets brought up. But man, just the weird racial stuff. I just can't, like, I didn't even rate this play because I didn't know how to correlate the interesting moral aspects with the outdated slurs and like modern characterization of these characters. So, would I recommend? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Just go in with warnings that it's dated. I let you know. Next, I read Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, which are actual letters. So this is nonfiction writing essays about poetry. So these are actual letters that the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote to I think this man was also a poet, but ended up being sent to the military or ended up having a military career. I can't remember who I saw that read this book, and they said it was life-changing and that anyone who's interested in writing or poetry should read it. Okay, this wasn't life-changing for me, but I think maybe it would have been if I was a younger writer. It was interesting reading Rainer's like obsession with isolation. Like he really like God, I think the word isolation is mentioned like at least 30 times. He's really obsessed with the idea that you have to go be alone to really dive into yourself and like get past the depression of being alone in order to like experience the world and write about it. I also didn't rate this because this came out after he already passed. So like this is a man's real life letters that he wrote without knowing they were going to be published, and then also didn't give like permission for them to be published. So I didn't end up reading this because that feels weird too. If you are interested in poetry or writing, you might want to give this a try. It's super short. I just don't think I was in a place to get a lot out of it that other people seem to. Okay, last I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is a YA dystopian. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games that is about Haymitch's games. There's already been so much said about this book, so I don't have a ton to contribute, but I will say I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I think Suzanne Collins is a brilliant writer and is just a really great world builder. And I think this book in particular really expands on the series. It felt like it completely retextualized The Hunger Games in a way the other prequel, Songs of Bald and Snakes, didn't. And I love that this really destroys the like chosen one trope, like really proved that, you know, the citizens of Panem were always fighting against the capital and were always trying to break free of this cycle of the Hunger Games. It didn't just start with Katniss. And I think that was really needed, especially in the world of today. Yeah, so that is everything I've read so far in 2025. This is my first YouTube book video, so I hope you like it. I hope you subscribe. There should be more book content coming out in the future. Okay, bye.